Hello, welcome to the third episode of the American Years Revisited podcast. I'm Kate Simpson, coordinator of the American Years Project. Our project is creating space for and recording the many stories and memories of all the people whose lives are intrinsically linked to the American Navy's presence in the Holy Loch by Dunoon on the west coast of Scotland. In this episode, two retired American sailors, well-known Dunoon residents Charlie Witherow and Gerry Pursley, talk about themselves and their memories of arriving in Scotland.
My name's Charlie Witherow. I'm a retired Chief Petty Officer. I'm originally from a little town in Pennsylvania called Wellsboro. I joined the Navy in 1967. And what happened is in 1966, America sent 100,000 troops to Vietnam. That's when it was starting. And the following year, another 100,000 were going. And I was getting ready to start college, but I knew my number would come up, I'd get drafted. And I decided, because my older brother was in the Navy, I joined the Navy. I didn't like it at the beginning, but eventually I decided to stay to come to Scotland. And I've got little things in my mind here. As a young 18-year-old from a coal mine and farming community in Pennsylvania, at 18 years old, going through Cape Hatteras. I don't know if anybody knows about Cape Hatteras, but I was a helmsman under instruction. Right? And I had to, this is no lie, I had to stand on a box to see over the wheel to steer the ship. You have to look over and see this thing called the gyro repeater. So when you take over the watch, you're like 4 degrees left rudder, 8 degrees right rudder, and all that stuff. And I'm thinking back, a little kid from a little town like that, and this is a big ship, and I'm steering it through the propellers are coming out of the water, the waves are coming through. And later on, I was an upper handling room captain, handling these 5-inch 38 bullets with a great big powder keg. And I was given the order to unset the fuse. And I had no idea. And then I had this wrench I had to put over the nose of this great big bullet. And that's so it could explode and all that stuff. Anyway, eventually I got here in Dunoon, Holy Loch in 1973. I was here 2 years. My father took a serious stroke, so I got I was due for orders anyway, but I got transferred to Charleston, South Carolina on a destroyer tender. And I spent the next 6 months, any moment I had free, to get back here. And I can't say why. I don't know why it was so much I wanted back here. And as anybody that was based here, especially if you're in repair department, this had to be the hardest working site in the Navy, because our FBN, Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarines, had to be on patrol at a certain time, because if they weren't on patrol, then those other guys who'd been out under the water all these lengthy times had to stay there. We had all kinds of deadlines. Jobs could be hot. They could be hot. They could have 999. And you order a part 999, that's really fast. But if it was really, really, really important, it's 999 priority hot. And they would take parts off other submarines to get here. This was it was called Refit Site 1. And I did till 1987. I retired, and in 30 years, I ran my little trophy and engraving shop. And a couple of years ago, I sold it. Now I'm just, one other wee thing that happened after 9/11. My wife and I were due to go home that weekend. 9/11 was a Tuesday. We were going home that weekend. I had everything set up as I was retired. I could fly from Mildenhall, England on a cargo plane for nothing. We were all set up for that weekend to go home. My sister was going in for a very serious operation. And then 9/11 happened. Well, after that, everything got canceled, obviously. And before that, I was thinking about trying to start up a Fleet Reserve branch here or something, because we had no one to turn to in Scotland, us retirees and veterans here. So I come up with making this thing called the March of Thoughts. And I carried the American flag. We marched down through the whole length of Dunoon and back. People on the streets are crying. I'm carrying this great big, it wasn't a parade flag, it was a big flag. And I'm crying. The guy behind me, Commander Richard Lambert, he's behind, and we did our thing. He laid the wreath. It was very emotional, because we didn't know if this was the end of the world as we knew it. We didn't know if we was ever going to get to see our families again. So I just started asking people like Jerry and everybody, would you be interested if we if I start up an association. So that was in 2002. 18 years later, we still have about 30. Like if we lose one of our shipmates, we do our own honors. We can get honor guards from from the Air Force, but we do our own. And I think if you've seen our little video where we did one up in Perth, all of us patted ourselves on the back. That's exactly what we wanted, and we did it. Don Gable, one of our Heritage members, he was in charge of folding the flag. It was just very emotional and appreciative from the family. And I'm really happy to be in this heritage thing. I hope it just keeps growing, keeps going and growing.
My name is Gerry Pursley. I joined the Navy in 1961 after President Kennedy started building up the troop count, a little bit like Charlie Witherow's story. I actually had a cousin who worked for the local draft board, gave me some inside information that I was going to be drafted. I had no real choice. I would either wind up probably toting a rifle, or I would be on a ship somewhere doing something. And previously, I had two uncles who were in the Navy when they were younger during the Second World War. And they always looked pretty sharp in their uniform. So I thought, well, that's me. I can do that. So I joined up in August, a couple of weeks before I would have been drafted. And a lot like Charlie in respect to the fact that I went to boot camp training at Great Lakes. I was up there those days. You did 12 weeks of training. It took them about 4 weeks to shoot you with injections. So, and the rest of the time, of course, they did testing. They tested your aptitude, all your different things to see where you would fit as far as the job was concerned. Because I'd been working on tractors and cars and trucks and this sort of stuff, I wanted to be a CB. And they said, well, no problem at all. Only thing is we don't have an opening for CBs. You're going to go on the ship. You're going to be an engineman. So anyway, I wound up taking a school for engineman and spent another 12 weeks in Great Lakes before getting my orders to a place called Holy Rock in Scotland. And you could not find it on the map because I was looking for the name of a town. Didn't realize it was just a little bit of stretch of water over here. So anyway, I knew where in the world it was, but I didn't know exactly where in the country it was. So anyway, it proved out to be a very good move and everything. And so I came here and met Linda. I flew from New York. I had come up through the mountains because I came from Kentucky and went across Tennessee and up through the Smoky Mountains. Everything was gray.
Yeah.
And when I left New York and flew over Scotland, and of course we came in a prop job. Mm-hmm. So, but when we're coming into land in Prestwick, it was most beautiful green you ever laid your eyes on. It was just a beautiful place. And you're thinking right away, well, I'm this far north. Why is it so beautiful? First impressions were go. It was beautiful. And it was a good experience. We had a good flight coming over. And then they said, well, there's where you're going over there, because we went into Guruk and then over to Greenock. We caught one of the Liberty boats from Cardwell Bay over to the ship. So, no, it was first impressions of Scotland was beautiful. And I was on the ship for about, I think it must have been a few days anyway. It was before I got off. And everybody saying, oh, well, if you want to go anywhere, you need to go to Greenock. You have to go to the other side of the water. It made it sound like that you only had a little store in Dunoon, like there was nothing there. It was great to get over. I'm used to a small town. I think, Charlie, you're the same, aren't you?
Yeah.
It was in Dunoon in 1962 when I came over. And in March and April, the town was buzzing. I mean, I never visited a place where they put all the produce on the pavements and people up and down the streets, and on a Saturday with all the prams being pushed up and down the street. It was the town was buzzing, and I thought, my God, this is not a small town. I came from a small town where we had a couple of guys sitting on park benches chewing tobacco and spitting their tobacco in their tin, So I mean, Dunoon was quite a surprise for me.
Yeah, like one of our bars we had, Silver Dollar or something like that. They always had peanuts on the bar.
Yeah, well,
and you can help yourself. But see, if you had to throw the peanut shells on the floor. If you put them in the ashtray, you had to buy a round of drinks and leave.
Yeah, but no, I think Dunoon was very lively. It was a nice town. Still is. And Charlie, when you came over, what was your first impression?
Well, being from a very, very small town, there's like 3,000 people, including the cemeteries and pets and everybody. When I got here, I flew into Prestwick because this was pre-computer time, so I had no idea what Scotland was going to be like. One of the things I noticed in the 70s, like in America, it was all big muscle cars, the big Buicks and Chevys and all that. And got here, it was like the 1100s and stuff. They looked like bread boxes. They had no character, almost like French cars, no character at all. When I got actually in the town for a bit, looking around, one of the things I can remember is the butcher shops. Looking through big plate glass window, and here's all kinds of different animals and chickens and stuff, all just hanging there. No coolers, no nothing. If that was today, everybody would be dropping dead. If they survived coronavirus, they'd be dropping dead from all this animal stuff. And I think the other stupid thing I remember is the pints of lager. You go into a bar in America and get a glass of beer, it's like 4 ounces, some little whooshy thing like you take orange juice in. Here you got like this. And I didn't steal this, by the way. It was in my hedge, so I just kept it. When you just thinking back of how things were, like you mentioned, I'd forgot about the prams and stuff. And actually prams sitting out in the street with kids in them. And it was safe and nothing happened. You can walk down the street. You can still do that. You can do what you want to do, and it's just a nice place to live.
Well, I remember as well, I flew into Prestwick as well when we arrived, and they drove us down in, I think, an old, what they call a Tim's van. They had about 8 or 10 of us jammed in this little van coming down to Gura. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was ended up sitting on somebody's knees coming down in the van. And, we had our sea bags in there and everything in there for the getting down to Cardwell Bay. Yeah, Dunoon, like you say, I mean, all the vegetable produce shops and everything had boxes, and they when they opened in the morning, they put all this stuff out on the pavements. And the fish shop served right through the window there, the one on Argyle Street, just up from the Crown. You could just go to the window and they would serve you. You had all the fresh meats and stuff right in front of you. It just wasn't what we were used to in the States in these days. It was so practical and so different that it just made it extremely enjoyable, to be there. The other thing of it was, coming off the ship in 62, we weren't allowed to wear civilian clothes when we first arrived. And everybody was in uniform. You'd meet people out. The odd one or two that you didn't see were people, in civilian clothes. You would see some that were probably had accommodation ashore at that time. There were a few of them, not very many, in 62. But it was like I'm saying, it was a very enjoyable experience arriving in Scotland, and the people made you feel extremely welcome.
I don't remember when they actually changed where you had to wear your uniform, or you didn't have to. I know you had to be an E5 or above to wear civilian clothes, and you'd have like the strip, like at Norfolk, and you'd have locker clubs, and even here you had a locker club, inside the bowling alley. And what really made it, one of the ships I was on, we went to Jamaica, and you're down there in your dress uniform on the beach. You really, Corps Fam shoes and a dress uniform on a beach. So what you do is you'd rent a motel, a whole bunch of you, and you go out and you buy a T-shirt and a pair of shorts and flip-flops. Then you had to throw them away, because having civilian clothes on the ship was probably more serious than having drugs. We didn't have a drug problem then. It was all in town, but it was such a different life. And you talk about it now, and you think every day when you went to go home, you had to put your uniform on, and
it was
wear it.
In 62, we didn't have a locker club. There was one when I came back in 71, and that was one just around the corner. There was a French guy that lived there. I can't remember his last name now, but he had a bunch of lockers in there, and guys would run up there and change their clothes and stuff. But you're quite right. You weren't even allowed to keep any civilian clothes in your locker on the ship.
No, not ever.
Nothing
It
at all.
was very serious that.
You found out that the uniform in Dunoon puts you completely, how do I say it, out of character with the usual Dunoon. Everybody knew exactly who you were. Yeah. So anyway, in those days we had our ship tag on your shoulder anyway. I know that when the holiday makers came to Dunoon, and a lot of them did come in about Easter time, we were generally quite an attraction in Dunoon. People stopping you and asking you where you're from, and let me hear your accent, and and all these sort of things. And you were a little bit like the pet dog in Dunoon, and
that was like that in the mid '80s. Also, I was the indoctrination officer. I had my office out by Arnett Pier, where it was the movie theater, and the coaches used to come up, like Shearings and stuff from Glenmorrig and stuff, and they would stop and they could call me, and I would go on the bus. I was a chief petty officer. I had my complete black uniform with the collar devices and metal ribbons and stuff, and I'd be walking on the bus, and these, as I am now, what I wasn't then, but these elderly ladies, it was like I felt like a record recorder person. They're reaching out, wanting to touch me.
Oh yeah.
No one comes near me now, but then, but it was really funny how they were just, so.
I felt like a bit of a Dunoon attraction, in those days.
You have been listening to Gerry Pursley and Charlie Witherow, and I have been Kate Simpson. Tune in next time for the second half of this conversation, where you'll hear Charlie and Gerry talk with Andreen Messersmith, Margaret Hubbard, Anne Campbell, and Linda Pursley. We'll get to hear the memories of the town from the first days of the American years, and Linda and Gerry will tell us how they met for the first time. Thank you for listening. See you next time.